Buckle up. It's time to break down the Buffalo Bills' Week 1 opponent, the challenges they present, and what the Buffalo Bills need to do to deal with them today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Tuesday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day. And as a reminder to you, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode of Locked On Bills is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Well, folks, it is time to get ready for the Buffalo Bills Week 1 matchup with the Los Angeles Rams. And this is an episode that you can expect every single game week to prepare for the opponent. And I'm going to talk very in-depth about the Los Angeles Rams. And part of my ability to do so stems from my job with the Draft Network, where we do pro and college scouting. It sets me up very, very well to talk about the entire league. And I hope that is something that brings value to you as a listener, because I'm able to talk about more than just the Buffalo Bills. I know the entire league. And so I hope that creates very good conversations here during our game weeks. And so I obviously have a huge focus and emphasis on the Buffalo Bills and what I do. But in my full-time job with the Draft Network, we cover the entire NFL and college football. And I'm part of the scouting department. We do pro and college scouting. And I'm able to take a lot of the things that we uncover there and apply it here and have good conversations to get ready for football games. If you don't like football, if you don't like getting into the weeds on stuff, this might not be your favorite episode. But I don't know any other way to prepare for a football game other than talking about it through this lens. And so if you've been with me for the last 4 years, you know exactly what you're about to get. If this is your first time with us, welcome. And let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams, the challenges that they present, and what the Buffalo Bills need to do to get a win in Week 1. All right, so the Buffalo Bills are on the road in Week 1 to face the Los Angeles Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions. The game will be played on Thursday, September 8th at 8:20 p.m. Eastern Time at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. The game will be broadcasted on NBC. Mike Tirico is on the play-by-play. Chris Collinsworth will be the game analyst, and Melissa Stark is the sideline reporter. This will be the 14th all-time meeting between the Rams and the Bills. The Bills lead the all-time series with an 8-5 record, including wins in 4 of the last 5 matchups against the Rams. The last time the Bills and Rams played was in 2020, Week 3. You guys probably remember this game. The Bills raced to a 28-3 lead midway through the third quarter. The Rams scored 29 unanswered points to take a 35-32 lead before Josh Allen led a game-winning drive and hit Tyler Kroft for a touchdown pass in the final seconds of the game. Now, one of the interesting storylines in this game is the Sean McDermott versus Sean McVay dynamic. You have arguably the brightest young offensive mind in football and one of the brightest, fairly young defensive minds in football. And this is the 4th time that a Sean McDermott team has faced a Sean McVay team. And so obviously that 2020 matchup. But prior to that, when McDermott was Carolina's defensive coordinator and Sean McVay was Washington's offensive coordinator, they faced each other a couple of times there. And so Sean McDermott's Panthers beat Sean McVay's Washington football team 26-15 in 2016. And then the Panthers also beat Washington 44-16 in 2015. Now let's look at specifically McDermott's success against McVay's offense. In 2015, The Panthers won 44-16. Washington was held to just 9 first downs, 186 total yards, only 14 rushing yards, 172 passing yards, and forced 5 turnovers. In 2016, McDermott's Panthers beat Washington 26-15. Washington was limited to 18 first downs, 335 total yards, 306 passing yards, 29 rushing on 13 attempts, and forced 3 turnovers. Now, the 2020 meeting, McDermott also won that, but the Rams had a lot more offensive success. The Bills, again, won 35-32, and McVay's Rams had 28 first downs, 478 total yards, 311 passing, 167 rushing, averaged 7.2 yards per play, but the Bills did force 2 turnovers. And so one of my big takeaways when you look at the 3 previous meetings between McVay and McDermott, McDermott's defenses have forced 10 turnovers in 3 games. That's a significant amount of turnovers in 3 games. And I think that speaks to McDermott kind of having an understanding of the style of game McVay wants to play offensively and coaches his players well to be in good positions to make plays. Now let's talk a little bit more about Sean McVay, the head coach of the Rams. He's 36 years old. He's in his 6th season coaching the Rams, and he's been unbelievably successful. In 2017, his first year, they were 11-5 and a playoff team. 2018, they were 13-3 and went to the Super Bowl, lost to the Patriots. 2019, they were 9-7. 2020, they were 10-6 and a playoff team again. And then in 2021, they acquired Matthew Stafford, and they went 12-5. They're the Super Bowl champions. Very, very successful run so far for Sean McVay with the Rams. 55-26 overall in terms of his record, 7-3 in the playoffs, and they've been to 2 Super Bowls already since 2017, and of course, won one of them. Now, you also have to remember that in McVay's first 4 seasons with the Rams, Jared Goff was his quarterback. McVay coached Jared Goff to the Super Bowl. He coached Jared Goff to an 11-5, 13-3, 9-7, and 10-6 mark. He's outstanding. He's an offensive-minded head coach that has produced year over year. Dating back to 2016 in Washington, his offenses have always been extremely consistent. They get yards, they get points. It's a tried and true system. He's a very, very complete offensive coach. He's coached a top 11 offense every single year since 2016. That's hard to do. That's really hard to do when you think about the volume of tape that's out there. Doesn't seem to matter. This guy consistently is able to coach good offenses. Now, real quick on McVay's rise to prominence. He came up under John Gruden. 2008, he was the assistant wide receivers coach in Tampa Bay. And then he was there for a couple of years, 2010 through 2016. He was an assistant in Washington. And then he winds up being the offensive coordinator there later in his stretch. And then, of course, gets the opportunity to be the Rams head coach in 2017 and has flourished. He's from the John Gruden, Mike Shanahan tree of football. Quarterback for the Rams is Matthew Stafford, 34 years old, 6'3", 220 pounds, was the number 1 overall pick in the 2009 NFL draft by the Detroit Lions out of Georgia. And Stafford had some struggles earlier in his career, very much like Josh Allen, and then has since become one of the most prolific passers in the NFL for a long time now. You look at Matthew Stafford's resume, it's off the charts. He's the fastest player in league history in terms of fewest amount of games played to reach 20,000 passing yards, 25,000, 30,000, 35,000, 40,000, 45,000 passing yards. Oh, by the way, if he has 5 more passing yards, which he's going to have against the Bills, he's going to top 50,000 career passing yards. He's the first quarterback in NFL history with 6,000 passing yards, 50 passing touchdowns, and a Super Bowl win in a single regular season plus postseason. He did that last year. And he's also super clutch. 40 game winning drives and 32 come from behind wins over the last 11 years. So he's productive, he's clutch, he's got good size, he's got a big arm, he's outstanding. In fact, he's the NFL's 12th all-time leading passer right now. And he started 182 games. He's been outstanding. He's a great football player. In 2021, he completed 67% of his passes, averaged 287 passing yards per game, 41 passing touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and a passer rating of 102.9. Now let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into his metrics from last season. And all of the metrics I'm about to provide include all 32 NFL quarterbacks to attempt at least 236 passes last season. Matthew Stafford's average time to throw is 2.66 seconds. That is 12th in the NFL. So he's the type of quarterback that doesn't necessarily get the ball out of his hands extremely fast, but he also doesn't really hold on to it. And he's good when he gets the ball out quick. He's good when he gets the ball out a little bit longer and holds on to it. And if this is the first time you're hearing me break down an opposing quarterback, this is typically where I would point out notable discrepancies with the splits. But that's just not the case with Stafford. He's good when he gets the ball out quick. He's good when he holds on to it for a little bit longer. Stafford's average depth of target last season was 8.8 yards, 7th in the NFL. So he's definitely a guy that pushes the ball down the field. To give you an idea, Josh Allen was at 9 yards average depth of target. So very, very similar. Stafford challenges the entire field. 11% of his passing attempts last season were 20 yards or more down the field. That's middle of the pack, and he's a pretty good deep passer. He completed 46.5% of his attempts when he targeted somebody 20-plus yards down the field. That was 6th best in the NFL last year. He had an 88.5 passer rating on deep throws last year. Now, that's not a great passer rating. That's 16th in the NFL, but I think that's because 7 interceptions factored into that on passes that were down the field 20-plus yards. So 7 interceptions. That was something that hurt his passer rating when pushing the ball down the field. When it comes to yards after catch, Matthew Stafford enjoys 5.3 additional yards after catch per completion, which is 12th in the NFL. Play action, it's not a huge part of what he does. 24.8% of his dropbacks are a play action pass, which is 21st in the NFL. And then again here, the splits with and without play action are nearly identical. It's a sign of a good quarterback. For some players, their production can be significantly skewed through play action. Think Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill with play action compared to without play action, a very different quarterback. That's not the case with Matthew Stafford. 10.9% of Stafford's passes are screens, which is 12th in the NFL. And so I hope that as I've delivered these numbers here, you can see just how balanced this passing attack is. There's a blended approach. They're not overly reliant on any one thing. They push it down the field. They run screen. They run play action. They'll do progression style stuff. They will challenge you in every possible way. And they have a quarterback in Matthew Stafford that has a big arm and access to the entire field. Now let's talk about his pressure splits. This is one of my favorite things to bring up about quarterbacks. And my buddy Aaron Quinn with Cover One always points out the importance of pressure. And I like to bring this up every single week. You want to make a quarterback worse? Get pressure on him. It's tried and true. It's fail-proof. Quarterbacks are worse when they're pressured. Now let's talk about Matthew Stafford last year. When Matthew Stafford's kept clean, he completes 72.4% of his passes, 8.2 yards per attempt, and a passer rating of 111.2. When he's under pressure, he only completes 49.6% of his passes, 8 yards per attempt, and a passer rating of 75. So when Matthew Stafford is pressured, his completion percentage falls 22.8%, and his passer rating drops 36.2 points. You want to make Matthew Stafford and literally any other quarterback worse, you get pressure on them, and I will bring that metric to you every single week. Now let's also look at his blitz splits. So when you blitz Matthew Stafford compared to when you don't blitz him. Last year, with no blitz, Matthew Stafford completed 65% of his passes, 7.9 yards per attempt, and a passer rating of 95. With the blitz, pay attention here, he completes 74.5% of his passes, 8.9 yards per attempt, and 131.4 passer rating. He kills the blitz. He kills it. 74.5% completion, literally 9 yards per attempt, and a passer rating over 130. You have to get organic pressure on Matthew Stafford. What I mean by organic pressure is you have to heat him up with 4 rushers. You can't commit extra defenders towards him because he's going to make you pay. Good quarterbacks like Matthew Stafford love for you to blitz them because they know how to replace the blitz with the ball and torch your defense. Matthew Stafford's going to torch you if you blitz. And now the Bills are not a very blitz-heavy defense, and they have a lot of pass rushers, right? So you'd like to think that they have what's necessary in their back pocket to create organic pressure, but you have to get pressure on Stafford, and you have to get pressure without blitzing him, or else he's going to rip you apart. He's going to make you pay. The NFL season is here, and I cannot wait to make entries over at PrizePicks. I've been enjoying college football, but as we know, NFL is king, and it starts Thursday night. PrizePicks is my favorite daily fantasy resource. How does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will go on to score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. And PrizePicks offers projections on literally any sport, not just NFL. They have Major League Baseball, NHL, PGA, college football, college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, you name it, they have it. Tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is literally that easy. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. And check this out. First-time users, you can get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. So if you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Just don't forget to use our promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, let's talk more about this Rams offense. We talked about the head coach, got into the quarterback, Matthew Stafford. Well, there's more to say about this offense. Their offensive coordinator is Liam Cohen. He's 36 years old. It's his first season as the Rams offensive coordinator, but folks, he's very much the offensive coordinator by title only. Sean McVay is the architect and play caller for the Rams. Let's look at the weapons. At running back, they have Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson. That's going to be their 2 primary ball carriers. Cam Akers is coming off of an injury last year. He actually got healthy enough late in the season to play in the Super Bowl. And then Darrell Henderson's a young player out of Memphis that was really good in Memphis, but has been kind of uneven in the pros. Now, both of these guys, Akers and Henderson, Akers will be their primary ball carrier. They're quick and elusive runners. They have decent power, but they're not big-time physical bangers, right? They're not big-time tackle breakers, but they're quick and they're elusive. They got decent size, but, this isn't your Damian Harris's and Derrick Henrys of the world. These are zone rushers. The entire objective of their rushing attack is wide zone rushing offense, so they're going to press, and they're going to search for creases, and they're going to hope to split your defense. All right, that's their philosophy. Wide zone, press, stretch, hope to crease it, and get downhill. Rushing offense was not a strength for the Rams last year. They were 25th in the NFL in rushing yards per game, and they only averaged 4 yards per carry, which was also 25th. This was a bottom-tier rushing offense last year. And, they had Sony Michel last year. Obviously, Cam Akers was supposed to be a big part of their team. He got hurt. And they certainly went through a lot of different running backs. But collectively, it wasn't a strength of their football team. Let's look at their offensive line. Their left tackle is Joe Noteboom. He replaces Andrew Whitworth, who's been, an awesome player, future Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer. And this is a big role for Joe Noteboom to step into. They paid him a lot of money to be their left tackle. And he's been with the team since 2018, but only started 17 games to this point. And he's kind of been more of a utility blocker and spot starter, and now he's stepping into a big role. For his career entering week 1, he has 780 career snaps at left tackle. He's played really all over that front. And now he's stepping into this left tackle role. He's athletic, but this is a big opportunity for him. Their left guard is David Edwards. He's entering his 4th season as a starter, and he's been really, really solid. Their center is Brian Allen. He's entering his third season as a starter, and he's been solid. Their right guard, this is another question mark. Looks like it's going to be Coleman Shelton, who's been in the league since 2019 and has started only 2 games. Austin Corbett was their starter previously at right guard. He, left in free agency to go to the Carolina Panthers, and now Coleman Shelton is the guy that's going to step in and be their right guard. It's a big question mark for this football team. At right tackle, they have Rob Havenstein, who's been their starter since 2015, and he's been outstanding. And it's really surprising to me because he's a very poor athlete. You wouldn't think that he fits this scheme, but he gets the job done. 6'8", 330 pounds, one of the worst athletes at right tackle you'll see in the league, but he has been outstanding. He's been a stalwart for this offensive line for a number of years. The big takeaway here from this offensive line is you have 2 new starters, 2 guys that are stepping into big roles. Joe Noteboom at left tackle, Coleman Shelton at right guard. They got solid players in the other 3 spots, but they have 2 really kind of inexperienced players stepping into major roles. Let's look at their weapons here. Wide receiver, they got this guy Cooper Kupp. Sure you know all about him. Had a crazy year last year, 145 catches, 1,947 yards, 16 touchdowns. Big-time production last year. I think if you count the playoffs, he had over 2,200 receiving yards. He's the focal point of their offense. Allen Robinson is their new number 2 receiver. Signed him over from Chicago, and he was really bad for the Bears last year. Obviously, a lot of production with the Jaguars. Had a decent start in Chicago, but things really weren't good last year. And I studied the Bears pretty in depth, and he did not play inspired football. It didn't look like he wanted to be there. Now, obviously, a lot of people think he's going to find his form. He's going to love being in LA, love playing with Matthew Stafford, love being with Sean McVay, but he's got to bounce back from a bad year. Then their other receivers, Van Jefferson is the guy you think will be their number 3. We'll see. He's kind of had an injury, and his status is unknown as of the recording of this podcast. And they also have Ben Skowronek, I think he's a replacement level player. Tutu Atwell, who is small. I mean, really small, but he's got a lot of speed, but he's very raw. I'm sure they might want to use him to try to push the defense and kind of lift the roof and stress the Bills down the field. But this is a very unproven player, a second-round pick a couple of years ago out of Louisville. He's literally just a little fast guy. We'll see what he can do. I think, he can make you pay. There's no question about it, but very unproven and very kind of a one-trick pony there. And then Lance Mccutchen's their other receiver, and he had a big preseason. That's what I can say about him. But we know this receiving core is about Cooper Kupp. It's about Allen Robinson. Cooper Kupp, obviously, building off of the season he had last year, and they do such a good job of working him from the slot, moving him outside, putting him in motion, trying to dictate matchups with him and get him the football. Runs great routes. He's got great hands. Not necessarily a dynamic speed threat, but he gets in and out of breaks. He's deceptive as a route runner, and he's really, really consistent. And then again, Allen Robinson, big physical, possession-style receiver. He's going to win the 50-50 balls, that type of thing. So we'll talk about those guys here in just a moment, but those are the 2 primary challenges at receiver. At tight end, they have Tyler Higbee, who is solid and reliable, 6'6", 255 pounds, good NFL starting tight end. And their backup is Bryson Hopkins, who has a lot to prove in the NFL, but I liked him a lot coming out of college, good route runner in hands, but he hasn't proven anything in the NFL to this point. But they got a nice tight end there in Tyler Higbee. So what are my keys for the Bills' defense against the Rams' offense? Well, first of all, don't blitz. You have to generate organic pressure. You have to rush 4 and get home with 4. Put Ed Oliver over Coleman Shelton and see what he can do. Put Von Miller over Joseph Noteboom and see what he can do. Put Von Miller over Rob Havenstein and see if he's got the athleticism to stay with him. And then you have to look at the ancillary players, the Greg Rousseaus of the world, the Tim Settles. Get these guys going. You have to get pressure on Stafford, but you have to do it without blitzing. He's going to kill you if you blitz. Number 2 is challenge this new offensive line. We talked about this. The left tackle's new, the right guard's new. The other 3 players are established, but they're playing alongside new players. Test the communication, run games, run twists, run stunts, do some gap exchanges. Get creative with how you deploy your 4 rushers and put some stress on them to communicate and play cohesively with 2 new starters that are stepping into a big stage and don't have a lot of experience. Number 3, Taryn Johnson versus Cooper Kupp. Yeah, I think that's going to be a big matchup for the Bills. Cooper Kupp's going to make plays, all right? It's going to happen. But you have to be able to weather the storm there, contain him the best you can, and put your best corner on him, which is Taryn Johnson. And Taryn Johnson plays in the slot. Cooper Kupp gets a lot of work in the slot. Now, don't think of Cooper Kupp as a slot only. He plays outside quite a bit. And I'm sure they're going to want him outside when the Bills' outside corners are Dane Jackson and Kyer Elam. Like, you definitely have to anticipate McVay scheming it up so that Kupp is not on Taryn Johnson. And so the rest of your corners have to be up to the task. Now, as far as Allen Robinson goes, I like how Kyer Elam matches up with him. I like how Dane Jackson matches up with him. Allen Robinson's not a great athlete. He's physical. And that's what I like about Dane Jackson and Kyer Elam. They're long, physical corners. Allen Robinson's probably going to make some plays. He's a good receiver, but matchup-wise, I feel decent about the Bills' ability to handle him. It's how they can force some matchups with Kupp that gives me some concern. So you have to be able to rise to the occasion here when it comes to handling Cooper Kupp. Number 4 is be ready for the horizontal and vertical attack. This is a very complete offense with how they will attack you. They build so much off of the zone rushing offense. It sets up their play-action boot game. It sets up their misdirections. It sets up their opportunities to push it down the field. They're going to test you with the screen game. They're going to force matchups. This is the type of team where you have to really be in position to defend every blade of grass on the field. They've got good middle of the field options. They got perimeter options. They got a guy in Tutu Atwell that can kind of push the ball down the field. If I don't know, he's a very reliable player, but he's got the speed that you have to respect. So you just have to be ready for literally this very nuanced horizontal and vertical attack that's going to stress you to defend the entire field, but they're also going to give you some misdirection and really challenge your integrity as a defense. You have to do your 111th, right? That's Sean McDermott preaches that 111 stuff. It's really meaningful, very, very meaningful in a game against a team like this offensively. The last thing I have down for number 5 is tackle, right? Like, this is a very obvious key to playing good defense, but based on how they will challenge you, you can't be having a lot of missed tackles. You cannot do it. And the Bills have not been a good tackling defense under Sean McDermott. I thought last year was their best season ever tackling under McDermott. Has to be even better this year, and that starts with a good performance tackling against the Los Angeles Rams. Folks, have you tried the Built Puffs yet? Here they are. When I tell you I eat these things all the time, I really mean it. I love Built Bars, but I think the Puffs are the best thing that they have, and they just dropped this cookie dough flavor, and I think it's phenomenal. I mean, it's so good. It's covered in 100% real chocolate. There's cookie dough chunks, and then, of course, the marshmallow in the middle. And I'm not even a marshmallow guy, but this thing, the whole blend of all the flavors, it's just so good. The texture, it's phenomenal. And they're healthy for you. Only 160 calories, 15 grams of protein. It is awesome. And they have tons of great flavors. If they have the brownie batters. They have all kinds of new flavors coming out all the time. Check it out over at built.com, the best protein bar on the planet. And you got to try the Puffs. They're awesome. I do have a deal for you. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKEDON15, and you'll get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON15. You'll get 15% off your next order. All right, let's talk about the defense. The Rams defense, that is. It's coordinated by Raheem Morris, 46 years old. He's entering his second season as the Rams defensive coordinator, and he has such an interesting background. Came up in the early 2000s with the Buccaneers as a defensive assistant when John Gruden was their head coach. Wound up being the Buccaneers head coach for 3 seasons. Went over to Washington and coached their secondary for a few years. Went to Atlanta in 2015 where he had a number of different roles. He was the assistant head coach, but he was assistant head coach and the defensive passing game coordinator. Then he was the assistant head coach and wide receivers coach, the assistant head coach and the passing game coordinator on offense. I mean, I have so much respect for the the different roles this man has filled in a short period of time in the NFL. He's a good football coach that has a good understanding of the entire scope of football. Wouldn't be surprised if he's on the radar again for head coaching opportunities. Very, very unique, diverse background and a good football coach. Then he came to the Rams in 2021. Last year was his first season with the Rams as their defensive coordinator. Of course, Brandon Staley left to be the head coach with the Chargers, and then Raheem Morris came in and took this job. And they were okay on defense last year, 17th in total defense, 15th in scoring defense. And as we talk about this personnel, it's kind of interesting because they lost a lot here on defense. They lost a lot on offense, right? They lost their left tackle, their right guard. They have a new number 2 receiver. Sony Michel's not there anymore. Like, there's some newness to that offense, but there's even more newness to the defense. Let's talk about their personnel. Defensive line, this is going to be an odd front defense, a lot of 3-down lineman looks, and the primary group is going to be Ashawn Robinson, who's a big, powerful, stout gap control player. Greg Gaines is their big nose tackle, and they also have this guy, Aaron Donald. Have you heard of him? Familiar at all? He's the best defensive player on the planet, the best defensive player I've ever seen. Just an unreal blend of technique, urgency, quickness, flexibility, processing skills. He is unreal. The best defensive player on the planet, maybe the best defensive player I've ever seen. He's a problem. He's a real problem. And it's interesting how they have this defensive line set up where you have 2 gap control style players, tanks, guys that are just going to anchor, hold their ground, play with extension, and then Aaron Donald, who's like literally the most dynamic defensive lineman in the game. On the edge, they have Leonard Floyd, who's their best edge rusher, speedy, kind of a wiry build, but he wins with speed and flexibility. Not much of a power player. And they also have Justin Hollins and Terrell Lewis, who are young players that haven't proven much in the NFL. Hollins played a bit more last year, kind of flashy, but there's not a whole lot that he can point to in terms of resume that's overly impressive. So I think their edge rushers, I think, is pretty light. I'll be honest with you. If your best edge rusher is Leonard Floyd, to me, that's below average in the NFL. At linebacker, they have Bobby Wagner coming over from the Seahawks and Ernest Jones. Now, Bobby Wagner is a phenomenal football player, but he ain't Bobby Wagner of 7-8 years ago. He started to decline a bit, and obviously maybe he'll be reignited a little bit here with the Rams. But I think Bobby Wagner's best football is behind him. He's still a good player, but I don't think this is one of the elite players in the NFL like he was in the past. Ernest Jones was I think he was a mid-day 3 pick last year out of South Carolina and had a good rookie season, had some really flashy moments. He's a solid player. And I think they found themselves a nice little draft steal in Ernest Jones. At corner, they have Jalen Ramsey, who's probably the best corner in the league. So they have the best defensive lineman. They have the best defensive player in Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, who's the best corner in the league. Opposite of Jalen Ramsey is David Long, who's really, this is another new player. He's been on the team, but Darius Williams was their starting outside corner opposite of Jalen Ramsey last year. So this is a new player here. And he's got some decent length. He's a decent athlete, but he's pretty unproven in the NFL. Their slot corner is Troy Hill, who actually I think he was with the Rams and now he's come back. Maybe he was last year with the Jaguars, if I'm not mistaken. And now he finds his way back to the Rams. At safety, it's Jordan Fuller, who's surprisingly an emerging young player out of Ohio State. And then Nick Scott is expected to be their other starter. But they'll play a lot of different safeties. You may see Taylor Rapp. You may see Terrell Burgess. But I think their best safety is Jordan Fuller. But I think the point that I want to make here with this defense is that they have a lot of new pieces. They don't have Von Miller anymore. Forgot which team he plays for. Can you guys remind me? You don't play for the... All right. That was a corny joke. But Von Miller, not on this team anymore. Agbo Okoronkwo, another depth pass rusher. He's not on this team anymore. Darius Williams, their other starting outside corner, not on this team anymore. Sebastian Joseph Day was part of their defensive line rotation. He's not on this team anymore. Troy Reeder was one of their starting linebackers last year. Not on this team anymore. Yeah, they're incorporating a lot of new pieces here up front at all 3 levels, right? At all 3 levels. On the edge, at linebacker with Bobby Wagner, no Troy Reeder. At corner with no Darius Williams, and you insert David Long. And at safety also, last year for the Super Bowl stretch, they brought in Eric Weddle, right? He's not around anymore. So some of their key pieces that kind of push them over the hump, they're not around. So what are my keys for the Bills offense versus this Rams defense? Number one, Aaron Donald. I've had some conversations with Coach Cromer. Had a chance to speak to him several times this offseason, and we got into Aaron Donald a little bit. I'll just say this. Aaron Cromer's aware of him. He's aware of him. Roger Saffold's aware of him. And I normally offer some type of an answer for you when I say the keys. I don't know how to stop Aaron Donald. Nobody does. If there was an answer, he wouldn't be what he is. I mean, he's an unreal player. He's going to make plays. So Ken Dorsey, your first game as offensive coordinator, you got a tough job trying to figure out what to do about that guy. They got a plan. But I don't have anything to offer here. You can commit extra bodies. I mean, certainly they don't have a ton of depth with their defensive line and edge rushers, and you feel like you can afford to kind of commit some extra attention there. But I don't think you can live in a world where you say Ryan Bates, Mitch Morse, Roger Saffold, figure it out, right? You're going to have one-on-ones. Sometimes you will. But I think you have to give them some help. So number one, Aaron Donald, whatever that means, try to figure that out. Number two, and if you see my notes right now, it's all capitals. Test them. Test this defense. They have new pieces everywhere. Get them thinking and dictate. It's a new scheme for Bobby Wagner. You got a lot of new pieces stepping into positions here. There's a lot of pieces that aren't here that they've been relying on. Test them. Test that communication. Oh, by the way, you have some new elements to your offense, right? With Dorsey and James Cook and just the different ways that we think the Bills' offensive scheme can evolve. Unleash it. Test these guys. Number three is I don't think that the Rams have very good collective team speed on defense. They have some slow dudes. Wagner and Ernest Jones at linebacker, that's not a lot of speed and range. Troy Hill in the slot does not have a lot of speed. Jordan Fuller at safety, very slow. And so with that in mind, with their slot corner, their two starting linebackers and one of their safeties being speed deficient, I'm attacking the middle of the field. That should be a big point of emphasis for Ken Dorsey. You look at X factors for the Bills in this game, Dawson Knox, Isaiah McKenzie, James Cook throwing the ball to running backs out of the backfield. I am stressing the middle of the field and testing their speed deficiency with my athletes. Number four, be aggressive and take care of the football. This is one of those games where I don't think you can win it if you lose the turnover battle. It's always hard to win when you don't win the turnover battle, but in a game like this, it's even worse. Be aggressive, go after them, take care of the football. Real quick on their specialist, their kicker is Matt Gay. He's in his third year. He was excellent. I mean, beyond excellent for them the last 2 years. Both seasons, 2020 and 2021, he's made 90% or better of his field goals. 40 of 44 last year, 59 of 60 on extra points. He's phenomenal. They've got a veteran punter in Riley Dixon. I think he's incredibly average, but he's an experienced average NFL punter. In his first season with the Rams, he was with the Giants the last 4 years, 2 years with Denver before that. And then their return guy is Brandon Powell. You guys probably remember him. He, if I'm not mistaken, he was with the Bills in camp last year and didn't make the team. Winds up going to the Rams, and he was a great returner for him as a kick return for the Rams as a kick returner and a punt returner. And he's also never muffed a punt in the NFL. So maybe he's due, or maybe he's just really good at fielding punts. We'll find out. So there you have it. We got into the weeds with the Los Angeles Rams. I hope by now you are well acquainted with this football team that the Bills face on Thursday night, the challenges that they present, what the Bills need to do to get a win. Hopefully we kind of plotted the path, if you will, for the Bills to beat the Rams on Thursday night. You can go around the water cooler now and have some good conversations. You got a lot of information. This was a big dump of information, but I don't know any other way to do it. This is how we get ready for games here on Locked On Bills. We'll do it every single week, and we got one down and hopefully many, many more. Obviously 16 more regular season games after this, but I want to do this into January and maybe even one more time in February. All right, folks, I was a little off on my rest of the week schedule. So tomorrow we're going to do Banged Up Bills. We'll talk to Kyle Trimble about the injuries and some other segments as well. But Thursday is going to be our crossover discussion with Locked On Rams. So you have that to look forward to later in the week. Friday, our recap podcast. So plenty more coming the rest of the week to get ready for this game. This was our introduction to Bills versus Rams, not the final discussion. So there's a lot more to get to this week. Make sure you don't miss anything. Make sure you're subscribed. We'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.